podcast is brought to you by Azerion. Azerion is one of the world's leading full-stack digital advertising partners for 300-plus agencies and 2,500-plus brands. Their proprietary platform, called Azerion Infinity, seamlessly integrates the capabilities of owned and operated DSP, SSP, DMP, and ad server technology to drive incremental performance value and efficiency across the full marketing funnel. At Azerion, they offer custom audience activation, leveraging cookie identity data and contextual signals to engage users across digital, CTV, OLV, DOOH, audio, in-game channels, everywhere else. Choose between direct or PMP activation, leveraging world-class trading teams to deliver top-of-plan results, or alternatively, access audiences through a data-connected PMP as a market leader in the sell-side curation category. That's Azerion, the sponsor of this podcast. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. We have our year-end/year start episode, the Marketecture Awards. Woohoo! Eric, you excited?
I'm excited. How's your holidays been, Ari?
It's been busy. I've been working and cooking, and I made some latkes for Hanukkah that came out pretty good. We tried the Instagram thing where you put like salmon on your latke like a canopy, and it was okay. I think I still prefer applesauce. What about you? How's your holiday been?
It's been great. A lot of eating, a lot of family, a lot of preparation for CES and next year. So it's going fast.
Yeah, the double Wednesday holiday is weird because it's like a 2-weeker, and you can't really take all that time off. You have to still put in some hours, so it's a little confusing. But it's good to have the family here. So last year we did the Marketecture Awards, where that's what we called them, where we did some predictions and called out some people. So we're going to do it again this year, but let's first do some housekeeping. So Marketecture will be at CES. We are filming in people's suites. We're calling it Sweet Suites. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's sort of like MTV Cribs for CES. And the videos will be posted as fast as possible. So the same week on LinkedIn, on YouTube, etc. So make sure you look out for those. It'll be a lot of fun. And then also I'm interviewing Adam Soroka from Magnite at the Magnite space at the barbershop at the Cosmo. We're actually oversubscribed, so we're not taking new RSVPs, but if you're on the list and can get in, I hope to see you there. Hopefully it'll be fun, and maybe we'll use some of that content on the pod. Eric, I think I asked you last week, but I'll ask you again. What are you doing at CES?
I'm doing meetings. I think I'm going to sneak into the Adam Soroka thing. That looks great, but I have meetings all day.
Every day.
So I won't be at Sweet Suites.
You won't be at Sweet Suites, but at night,
there'll be no cameos. No.
Baccarat?
More meetings.
Put on the tuxedo or the martini and go to the Baccarat table.
No, I'm not a gambler. But I can't resist roulette sometimes.
Yeah.
And I realize it's the worst odds. But just playing a color and doubling down or losing and walking away could be fun.
All right, so with that, let's jump into the Marketecture Awards. So let's hold ourselves accountable and say how we did last year. So we had a lot of questions last year. We're not going to go through every single one, but we'll talk about some good calls and some bad calls. So I think, Eric, you had some good calls. You were asked about public CEOs. What did you come up with?
Last year, I think I either had a tie or we name checked both Adam from AppLovin and Tim from Viant. And I think those were two good calls last year. And I think they're going to be two good calls this year, which we'll get into in a moment. What about you?
Well, if you had just forgotten this whole early stage VC crap and just put all your money on those two stocks, you would have had quite a good return for the LPs.
Don't remind me. Again, I have the stats. I have the numbers. Don't remind me.
Yeah, it would be bad. I didn't do as well. We joked about this on the pod previously, that my call, we asked who was the best private company CEO, and I called out Ross from VideoAmp, and he promptly lost his job a week after we recorded. And the company went into a bit of a tailspin. So I love Ross. He texts me sometimes with weird information, but not the best call on that. Also predictions. So we talked a lot about predictions. I'm not sure who did which prediction, but in general, our vibe was on the right direction. We started saying that AI was going to be big. Well, that was a really tough prediction. but we thought, in particular, I think we riffed on the idea that there might be AI-enabled agencies coming out. So very thin staffing, mostly tech. I don't think we've seen that yet.
Not yet. It's going to come, absolutely. And I think it's, we need to see more solutions come to bear to allow them to like do everything that an agency does. But if you also think about it, right, like, to the extent that agencies are heavily focused on some of these algorithmic tools like PMAX and Advantage Plus and Audience Plus, like you could do a lot with a little if you're like very forward leaning from a media standpoint. But it was an early one.
The other thing was that ad tech would find a way as it relates to cookies. I think this is a whiff. Like, I don't think ad tech is in better shape today than it was a year ago with regard to cookies. I think it's the same exact conversation, same mess, with the exception that Google also shit the bed in addition to everybody else.
Exactly. The industry, exactly, did not find a way.
Did not.
Thank you to Google.
Yeah, the first half of the year was all like, hey, we have a new sandbox trial, new info. Like, here's how much cookies are going on. Here's how it isn't. And then middle of the year, Google's like, there's too much regulatory pressure. We're just not going to do this. They're still doing the sandbox. The sandbox is not dead by any means, but they're not unilaterally removing cookies. So it adds another level of uncertainty.
Yeah, you had a pretty prescient prediction, which was Google does or does not spin out its ad tech, but something happens.
Yeah, I entered the year. I think I was on the record at a 50% chance that it would spin out it would be announced this year, and it did not get announced. But there was quite a bit of movement on this. So I'll just summarize for folks, which is we're waiting on the Virginia trial, which is supposed to come before the end of the year. So it could come before this podcast even drops, which I expect to require a spin out. Europe is going to require a spin out. Also, the ruling from Europe is expected any moment. And in September, Reuters published a story that was well sourced that said that Google had offered a spin out to the European Union already, just for AdX. They didn't offer the ad server. They just offered AdX. So, that's a lot of movement, and you'll hear my prediction this year on that subject too, which will be very similar.
Nice. I had a bad one. I predicted that Netflix was gonna like really, just emerge very, very strong as a player in CTV. While their year-over-year growth was substantial, like I forget exactly what the numbers were. Like, they demonstrated like great year-over-year growth in terms of like the number of ad tier subscribers. It's still not on the radar of like a CTV media plan. So I think I'll take that one as an L.
Yeah, I mean, I think Netflix takes as an L. We're just observers. But there's a lot of opportunity there, and I don't know if it's a misstep or it's just inertia, but I think it definitely didn't come true. Maybe Nicole is new there. She's going to get things moving. We hope so. It'll be fun to see. M&A coming back. So we both thought M&A would come back, and it has. We have the Audigent acquisition that just happened. We have Innovid being acquired by MediaOcean. We have, I don't know, name some. There's a lot more.
You had Walmart Vizio.
Yeah.
You had LiveRamp Pabu. You had Reddit Memorable. So it was a really good mix of like strategic acquisitions and then just some consolidation, right? Like the, Seed Tag Beachfront type of deals.
Live Intent.
Exactly. I think we nailed that one.
I think we'll see that continue. I don't want to go to the future talking, but you still have a lot of good, successful mid-sized ad tech companies where the IPO window is largely closed, and they're looking for options. So, find those options. All right, let's transition to talk about the future and to start predicting things.
And our awards before the predictions.
I'm sorry, awards and predictions. Okay,
for the year that was. Awards. Come on, this is a recap.
One prediction is that we're going to have a new host of this podcast soon.
Stop it!
I can't take it anymore.
Don't leave us.
Okay, what was the hottest trend of 2024 in ad tech?
I mean, undoubtedly, it was curation.
No doubt, curation. Both full agree. I swear to God, and I'm just displaying my ignorance here. A year ago, I didn't know what curation was. I mean, I kind of knew that AppNexus had a product that was called Curate, and I kind of knew what that did, but that was just so deep in my memory. It was not a top of my list of important things. And then I did a interview with Audigent, and then I did an interview with Index with Casali, and I was like, oh crap, this is real. This is big. And I wrote a couple articles about it. I'm a huge believer in it. You were an investor in Audigen, right?
Yeah, we were an investor in Audigen. So similarly, it went from, Audigen being really the company that invented it. I think it's arguable. They were the first ones that were out there really championing the idea, to you writing a couple of like prescient articles, to everyone talking about it and yelling about it for literally the entire year, to Experian acquiring Audigen. Again, the number wasn't public, but it was a really, really good outcome right at the end of the year. So this was the year of curation.
And it just benefits everybody. And the people who are haters just need to stop hating so much. And, there's this feeling like it's somehow taking advantage of publishers because their inventory is being rebundled. But the publishers are opt-in. They do not have to do this. So I think those arguments are pretty weak tea. What about AI? AI was a big year for AI.
I mean, it was all over the place, right? Like, just with like interesting announcements and innovation. But I think the one thing, if we take a step back and look at it from a trend standpoint, was publishers cutting deals with these AI platforms. Digiday I think it was actually today, they, created the definitive list of like who cut deals with who. But basically every publisher cut a deal with OpenAI or Perplexity. I think it was probably like one of the bigger trends of the year for sure.
Yeah, and the ones who didn't cut deals sued. There's a New York Times lawsuit going on, which is sort of the opposite of cutting a deal. It's found money. 100% margin money. It's like, hey, take my archives and pay me $30 million. That's wonderful news for the publisher community. We don't know what will happen in the long term. If the traffic dry up, will compensate. But it's great. It's great to see that trend. So what was the biggest flop or the most hype this year?
I was like so bullish on Netflix. So I'm going to continue that one with, I expected Netflix to, really make a dent in the CTV space as it relates to, building like a large business, getting like a significant share of media buys. And it just didn't happen.
I kind of would double down on that and say, not only did Netflix not make the splash, but Amazon Fire TV did. So this year saw Fire TV massively increase the volume of available inventory because they changed their subscriptions to add ads. And there was reporting from Ad Exchanger that it had a marked impact on pricing in the CTV market because it flooded the market with so much available inventory. So the market went from supply constrained to demand constrained just because of one player's actions.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, back to Netflix, they were great from a content and programming standpoint, particularly around like live sports. All of a sudden, right? You had Tyson Paul, you had this like football thing with Beyonce this past week. Yeah, everybody tuned into. So it's there. So I'm hopeful that they figure this thing out because there's so much opportunity for innovation around like monetization of live generally that I'm really hopeful at 25 they figure this thing out.
Yeah, Eric, are you part of the Beehive or Taylor Nation?
I'm not.
You're declining both. I'm not members of either, but I'm a big fan of both. So I have a hard time choosing between them. So my biggest hype flop has got to be the Privacy Sandbox. 4 years in the making, enormous amounts of effort being put into this from the Google side, but also the customer side. And they just ran into a mixture of industry non-compliance, I guess I'd say it, and the CMA, the UK's Competition Market Authority, which continued to ask, I think, very reasonable questions of them. And Google at some point just threw up their hands and said, we can't solve these problems. And that is just such a miss, such a fail, that even if it does come out, maybe it's the trough of disillusionment, and a year or two from now, we'll be talking about how great all these browser-based privacy things are, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like just a massive miscue.
A rare L by the big G.
Well, it's not. The big G L's all the time, but they do it quickly. They like put out some crappy chat program and then it disappears and no one cares. This one, they went all in and they just, All right. Let's talk about the best CEOs, the best executives. You want to do public or private first?
Let's go public. You go first.
I got to give it to Jeff Green. I know. So there's a lot of attention on AppLovin now as the new shiny toy, but I just like the Trade Desk's execution, the way that they are They're using their data platform to get consumers to, register on websites. I forget all the brand names, to be honest. And then the supply work they've done to get closer and closer to the supply, and the audacious move to build their own operating system, which may be a win, maybe not. We probably need a couple years to find that out. I think he's executing on all cylinders.
I agree. And from a public markets performance perspective, they've done really well. They're up 70% year over year, so far exceeding the market.
Yeah, exactly. From a high point. I mean, it was hard to justify their valuation a year ago, 70% higher now. Yeah,
absolutely. You can't argue with that one. I'll take a different direction and actually bring back a name that we mentioned last year and earlier in this episode. My CEO of the year for public is Tim Vanderhook. Let me explain why. Let's talk about, the ultimate scorecard of how a public CEO is measured. It's measured by their stock performance. Viant, as of when I did the research last week, was up 200% year over year. So again, an awesome year from a performance perspective. Viant also had what I would consider the launch of the year, the product announcement of the year with Viant AI. Like, they recorded that video. It got basically everybody in ad tech looking at it, commenting on it, sharing it. I think they really did a good job of painting the picture of what Sir Martin in our last interview said, the sort of wow factor of AI. They showed what you can do with AI from a DSP standpoint. They're just getting started. And they did smart strategic M&A with the acquisition of Iris TV. So I think if you think about all those boxes you'd want to check, Viant had an awesome year, and you got to give Tim a ton of credit. And he's been out there. He is mixing it up. He's mixing it up on LinkedIn. He's mixing it up a little bit less on X. That's Chris. But he's become, I think, a lot more public facing than he's been in a long time.
Yeah, I think he did two things that people think are impossible. One was get people excited about an ad tech product, and two was help a sub-billion-dollar market cap company grow in valuation. I think a lot of us have a stock in a bunch of public companies that are $100, $200 million market cap, and they seem like they're stuck there forever. And Viant maybe is finding a way to get escape velocity.
And then I think honorable mention, you have to call out AppLovin again. Exceeded the market cap of TTD, up 750% year over year. Seems to be cracking the code on e-commerce. What a year by those guys.
I'm looking forward to this exact podcast a year from now to talk about this. We'll either be like, oh my God, AppLovin's taken over the world, or wow, that was exciting. We'll see.
It could go either way. It could truly go either way. So that's a great point.
So for private CEOs, Eric and I actually are in agreement. So we have a unanimous vote here for previous podcast guest, Mr. Bill Wise. So
Billy Blockchain.
Yeah, hopefully this won't go to Bill's ego, because it's such a small, modest ego to begin with. Why do you think Bill deserves this?
Well, so number one, I think he was our first interview of 2024, and it was one of our best. I thought it was a great episode. A podcast, number one. Number two, the acquisition of Innovid, right? Like a private company acquiring a public company, that is no joke. And one that I think has some really impressive strategic implications with where they could take the thing. So, pulling off a deal like that is incredible. And then following it up a week or so later with 3 of the 6 holding companies, 3 of his largest customers making strategic investments in the business. A real power play to lock things in.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is that he also vanquished his main rival. So Hudson MX was considered the kind of fly in the ointment on the Mediaocean story, and they went fully out of business. It's not rare that you totally vanquish a rival with that dramatic a flair. So very interesting. We'd love to see Bill Wise on the public CEO list at some point. Come on, let's get going. No one's getting younger around here. We want to see that Mediaocean's IPO. But I guess for now he'll have to stay on the private list.
And again, just if we can slip in an honorable mention for this category, since we were both in agreement, I'll call out Bach. If you recall, this time last year, the guy was preparing for heart surgery, and so successfully came out of heart surgery, recovered, and came out of the gate with a bigger and more ambitious vision for Scope 3, which is not just decarbonizing ads, but decarbonizing AI. So just from the standpoint of like, the resilience that guy's shown and the again, raw ambition, I think it's worthy of a shout out.
All right. Let's talk about the worst moments of the year. We call it the most cringe moment. Eric, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, I think Google completely just giving up on deprecating cookies. I don't know if you call that cringe. I don't know exactly what you should call that, but like, I think we were all like, oh my God, when that thing happened. What do you think?
I've got to go for the colossal mess. So
even bigger than cookies?
Well, I don't know. It just wins points for the messiness. This is the most cringe moment. So this is the moment where most of the people listening to our podcast was like, make it stop. Make it stop. I mean, if you recall, there was this SSP no one had heard of, run by a public company who lost their auditor, who was accused by analytics of using data in the incorrect way. And then their immediate response was to sue analytics, to throw their partner BidSwitch under the bus, to blame everyone but themselves. And then they came back and said, oh, well, I don't know, maybe something happened. Who knows? But we're best friends with BidSwitch now, and we're back in business, and no one really knows what's going on with this company, and it's just messy. It's like, Real Housewives of Ad Tech type story.
I was really trying to rack my brain for cringe moments this year, and it feels like there were less of them. Maybe next year we'll see more.
Well, analytics serves up the cringe moments for us. Like, you remember this year? This has been a long year. Like, we've aged like 5 or 6 years this year. But this was also the year. Remember the www.3.forbes.com? That was pretty gross.
Oh, all right. I changed my answer. Good call.
Yeah, that was awful. That was pretty awful. So I don't know. There's been a lot.
And then Sincera figured out, oh God, I forget the name of the company that was basically like a entire company creating MFA inventory, and they shut it down.
Wasn't that owned by Perion?
Yeah.
Perion had a division that was like press a button and get your own MFA site. Yeah,
I think so. Stuff. Yeah, I forget the name. But yeah, it was shout out to Sincera. Anyway, okay. All right, you're right. It was more than just cookies.
While we're on Sincera, I think they were our hottest early stage startup last year. They're still an early stage startup, but we got to mix it up a little bit. We can't have repeats. So what's your vote for the hottest early stage startup? And by early stage, we're talking about Series A or earlier.
You had some good picks here too. So if I have to name one, I'm going to name Chalice. Chalice is on a tear, just with, A, kind of pioneering this idea of custom algorithms. And then B, if you look at some of the announcements that they made this year around being able to value inventory at a page level, what they're doing with index, and then just as an investor seeing, some of the growth, it's been really impressive. So shout out to Chalice. Again, it's a early stage defined by, we agreed that it would be Series A or earlier. But it's a company that's been at it for some time. They've been on a total tear. What about you?
Yeah, they did that interesting thing with Index. I didn't fully understand it, but they sent me the press release like 4 times. So I'm gonna shout out the attention space. So we had Mark from Adelaide here who did. It was one of my favorite episodes. It didn't really do great numbers, but I thought it was really interesting. Where Mark explained how attention measurement works. So Adelaide just recently raised. They're sort of borderline. It wasn't a B round, right? Because you were involved with it. It was sort of like an A+ round.
Yeah.
So there's still
it was a C+. Yeah, C+.
C+. But I also want to call out their European counterpart, Lumen, who just did a deal with IAS and has a different methodology from Adelaide to also do attention. And I think they have a really interesting sort of AI-enabled data play. And then I'm cheating. I'm just adding more. I think Mobius from the Goodhart Brothers that's still in stealth is pretty interesting. Mobian. Sorry. Not Mobius. Mobian. Sorry, my bad. They haven't fully, launched even. It's like sort of half stealth. They're talking about it. People have seen it, but what it is and how it's exactly going to work is still TBD, but it's pretty exciting stuff.
It's interesting. It's a company that everyone is aware of. So I would certainly, call it one of the hottest companies, but very few are working with and have the, kind of depth of understanding what they're doing. So I think they're doing a great job of building buzz. Look, we're in early stage investors, so I could go on and on about companies doing cool things. I do think that there's one that launched at CES, and then by the end of the year, so this is ShopSense AI, who you had on the pod. You had Brian on. By the end of the year, like they have I think half a dozen premium publishers that are using their tech to build RMNs. So it's been one of the best launches I've seen in a year's time in some time. So shout out to ShopSense. They're in the middle of a bunch of really cool stuff.
ShopSense is like a third screen shopping experience. So you're watching the NBA and they put up a URL or a QR code and you can shop. It's neat. It's a neat idea. It's like not, cutting edge AI or anything like that, but, get people to shop while they watch TV. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Okay. What about later stage, Series B or later? Who's on your list?
TV Scientific for sure. They came out early this year with an investment round led by Sir Martin, with a bunch of other great firms involved. They are kind of pioneering and becoming synonymous with this idea of performance TV. So they've done an incredible job, I think, of really championing that. And again, anybody that knows the company knows they're doing quite well. We had Jason on the Open Market Pod. So number one, he is so intense. Actually, had Jason and I think the winner of your nomination, which we'll talk about in a second, on both of them were awesome. Jason is so intense, and the work that they're doing around patents, it's just a different conversation. It's pretty fascinating. I'd recommend everybody check that one out. What was your
Mine's
winner?
The rival company Vibe, where I'm on the board, so I'm very biased here. But I love what Vibe's doing. They're in the same space as TV Scientific, but taking a different approach. Going very small business, sign up with a credit card, buy TV for $50 a month. They launched their AI generated creative builder, which is really sexy. They're building supply path. It's basically their own sources of supply. And I think these two companies are sort of taking different approaches to the same problem. TV Scientific kind of going algorithm down and Vibe going UI up. And they're both going to grow the market for CTV publishers quite a bit. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Shout out to Arthur. They had another really impressive product launch this year with the videos and a bunch of their execs doing demos. It was really good. Anybody else on your minds for later stage?
Putting me on the spot. No, do you have anybody?
Because you can go late stage and consider Index. Index is a private company. Yeah. I think a 20-year-old company, and they're doing great. There's so many companies we could name here.
Yeah, I think Index's embrace of curation and their product development around that has been impressive. So I like to see that. It's not exactly a pivot, but it's a push in a different direction that I think they're a little bit ahead of their direct competitors. I had a chance to see the UI of a company called Bliss in the UK. It's not very well known, sure. BLIS. They have sort of a DSP that is very focused on non-cookies, about geography and things like that. I was very impressed with that. I don't know what their business status is because they're mostly UK, but they one of the better products I've seen in a while. Okay, so what about new tech, like cutting edge tech? It must be AI, right?
Absolutely. There's still so much to be built and so much innovation happening on the AI front. And again, just because we're a little biased and, we're early stage investors, we're seeing it. The one thing that I'm excited about that I think we're going to see real promise in the years to come and even 2025 is agentic AI. This idea of just having agents that are autonomous and, are beginning to do the work of people just at greater scale. We're seeing some examples of this in our portfolio with companies like Pilot Desk, which is effectively using agents to do the work of many people 24 hours a day. And I think this is the type of thing that's got potential to really be massively both, I think, disruptive and helpful to the industry. So agents are on my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think with regard to Pilot Desk, what I like about that company is that they're operating within the constraints of legacy ad tech. There's two approaches if you want to use AI in ad tech. Number one is you start from scratch. You just say, feed us your log files and we'll figure it out. And that's really problematic. No one's going to put their business in your hands when it's just black box. And option two is sort of what they're doing, which is, okay, we understand what a line item is. We understand what an order is. Let's use technology to make them better. And I think that's, given some of the constraints, probably the right approach. For me, I am a believer in brand-focused AI, not for creative, but for what might be called the future of SEO. So this is sort of some of the work that the startup Michael Rubenstein and John Heller are working on. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if their approach is the right one. There's another company in the West Coast called Bluefish, I think, that's also doing something similar. I think that brands are going to present their products to consumers in a totally different way using AI. Websites will be just for a little bit of eye candy, but the real core information that drives purchasing decisions will be created and disseminated by AI to AI so that agents can help them make better decisions.
I've seen a couple of pitches for companies that are going after this space over the course of the past couple of months. So it's happening for sure.
Okay, let's point inwards about the Marketecture podcast. So we hit our 100th episode this year. Yay. That was pretty exciting. Marketecture itself a year ago was just me. I was selling ads. I was placing the ads. I was doing everything. And and now I've got 3 people, 4 newsletters, 3 podcasts, wrapping our first event. So a lot has happened. But with all that said, what were your memories of the best episodes? What did you learn? Let's give ourselves a big pat on the back.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. This wasn't my pick, but after you pulled off that acquisition of ATG and Jeremy Bloom, that was a fun episode.
It was.
It was. Yeah. It felt like that was a milestone. Things changed from there. God, I got to pick one that's a favorite. The one we did with Michael Kasson just a few weeks ago. I mean, that guy is so good. The story is, he's so funny. He had us rolling and had some great stories. I think, it's pretty incredible, the longevity that he's had. What about you?
Yeah, so I looked at the stats, and the most views was the Brian O'Kelly episode. So that was 5 or 6 weeks ago. That was a good one. He's fun. He's fun. He's a little prickly and contentious at times. So we had a good conversation. But my favorite was when we got Alex Cohn of Google, of the Sandbox here, and he very bravely stood up. I remember it was one of our longest episodes because I just interrogated him for 45, 50 minutes about everything about the Sandbox. It was, that was our number 2 listened to episode too. So people really got a lot out of that. And, he had a tough year. I'll just say, guys having probably not enjoying his day to day so much, but he's doing his best to make the Sandbox thing happen in some form.
And what a likable guy, by the way.
He is.
Just hang out with him in person at an event or a conference. You instantly become a fan.
Absolutely. He's a great guy. Hopefully we'll have him back at some point once we have a little more clarity on what's going on. And the other episode, I think you pulled this out in some of the notes, was Lara Koenig from MIQ.
Holy cow. That was so good. So that was episode number 67. And it was basically inspired by a presentation you saw Lara do, which is still publicly available. Yeah, by the way, the link is out there, which was effectively the state of the state of programmatic buying in CTV. And the stats that she was able to just cite, and again, it was from that presentation, but just really underscoring the fragmentation of the market. 114 different supply paths to a given CTV app, the variance of CPMs up to 250%, again, on the same inventory. I think she did a great job, helping everyone understand the state of the state, but then also how to make things better. That was, to me, the most educational episode of the year. And obviously, Chris from Jounce being a close second ago. It's
Yeah, I was going to call out Chris. So Chris from Jounce was on maybe in the spring during the sort of height of the MFA craziness, and he just very calmly and clearly defined what he thought MFA was, how it was trending. We saw one of the bigger underreported stories of this year has been a big decline in MFA because the mania around it started, I think, in the fall of 23. Because there was an A&A report, and then people started cracking down on it, and then there was analytics, and there was a whole bunch of things happened, and the number of sites on a media plan, number of MFA sites and media plans is dramatically lower, which is good for everybody. So I'm glad that we had a very, very small part in communicating about that.
Yeah, if you think about it, right, like, you talk about TTD with the SP 500 plus, talk about the rise of curation. All of this is directly taking aim at that stuff that you were pointing towards, and it's been a real year of improvement.
I forgot about the S&P 500 plus. That was yeah. Jeff Green does not win awards for naming stuff. That's just like not his skill set.
That's all right. He's got a couple other things he's all right at.
All right, let's move on to what everyone wants to hear, our predictions, because, people live and die by the opinions of Eric and Ari on ad tech. So let's peer into our crystal ball and see what we see for the great year 2025. I'm just going to tee up one until we get both of our opinions on it, which is the TikTok ban, which is coming up really soon. It's like 3 weeks from now. It's supposed to be banned. It's going to the Supreme Court next week, I think. What do you think is going to happen?
It looks like it's going to be banned. So number one, like, if you got to choose a side, like the fact that it's reaching this point, it's like 50-50. We could say, hey, let's say it gets banned. If it gets banned, it becomes very interesting, right? Like, do you see that? What's that business size even? It's like $20 billion?
It's huge. It's huge. I don't know if we've seen a US number, but it's certainly bigger than like Snap. It's I would say it's the number 3 social network after Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, without a doubt, right? So it's where does all that social video spend go? And is Zuck yet again, a winner just because, Instagram can suck up all of that, spend? Can YouTube suck up all of that spend is number one? And then number two, they've got a massive multi-billion-dollar like social commerce business. Right. Where does that go? Or does it stay on the platform as a US company? Without the algorithm, I don't know if that's the case. So I don't know, but I feel like my prediction is this is going to be a big story and it's going to happen quick.
Yeah. I think I'll predict specifically. I don't think the Supreme Court will get involved. I think they'll turn it down. I think Trump will let it slide somehow. Some magical, Trump always finds some way out of a corner. He's going to figure out some way to let it slide and let TikTok continue. I'm not really sure what mechanism will be used, and maybe there is no mechanism, but he'll still let it use. I think TikTok is still going to be around. And if it gets banned, we should do really. Aaron Sorkin, if he listens to this podcast, really should do a sequel to The Social Network. It could be like Chinese intrigue. You could have Zuck on his surfboard. There's like so much material there for the Social Network Part 2. Okay, so I'm gonna go on the record about the Google thing prediction wise. I think absolutely 100% we get a spin out of the ad tech assets announced. It may not complete in the year, but it is announced in 2025. I don't see any reason why they would continue protecting it at some point. They're going to have 2 or 3 different courts mandating it gets spun out. There's only so many appeals you can do. There's only so much they can do, and they have no political strength at all. Everyone in DC, including Elon and Trump, hate them, and it's going to happen.
I can't argue. You're all over this.
I'm all over it. Maybe they'll hire me as a consultant to figure out, how to rebrand it.
That would be amazing. I think we said last year the M&A market comes back. My prediction for next year, the M&A market heats up, and we see a continued rise in strategic M&A. The strategics, again, defined as either the public companies or the scaled private companies, to a large degree, have been sitting on the sidelines as it relates to M&A. I think with the new administration, with, the acknowledged, kind of gaps that, many of these companies have in everything from CTV to commerce to AI. And you've been, I think, really pointing out like just how far behind, so many of the large companies are with AI. I think they start to get acquisitive, and you start to see the comeback of strategic M&A versus, kind of half strategic, half consolidation as we saw this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll add some color or flavor to my side of the prediction, which is I think AI works two ways. There's one, which is big company acquires small AI company. That makes sense. There's a different flavor, though, which is, there's an AI opportunity, but you need to buy a legacy company to make it work. Like Creative would be in that example. It is much harder to create an AI generative creative asset company than it is to bolt AI onto Adobe or onto Celtra or VidMob or someone like that, or Sightly. There's a lot of these scaled creative companies, and I think that would be an example. I think retail media might be another example where the hard part is getting into the retailer, not the AI part. And so there's a lot of opportunities for I would call them mid-size successful SaaS companies in our space to get acquired for an AI thesis.
That makes a lot of sense. That's right on. I'm like, back to Netflix. I'm also really excited about just like live moving into streaming. And I think that could be, an area where we see some M&A as well. Because it's just such a massive opportunity. You can really build a thesis around it.
Well, what do you mean? What sort of companies do you think will be excited about live?
Amazon and Netflix, right? They're going to be having more and more live programming.
Yep.
And then having the ability to have unique monetization during those moments. Again, I don't want to like talk up the portfolio, so I won't name individual companies, but there's companies that specialize in monetization of live. There's companies that specialize in, creating commerce opportunities in live program. Like I think the live of tomorrow doesn't necessarily need to look like the live of today as it relates to monetization and ad formats and how you actually make money off this stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like you mentioned, ShopSense AI is one example,
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I could definitely see that. So, what do we think is going to happen with AI in general? Do you have predictions about AI as it relates to advertising this year?
Absolutely. Like you see the groundwork being laid. Number one, right, with the holdcos doing all of this, both combination of acquisition and then the mega merger that we just covered a couple of weeks ago, and all the investments that are being made. So I think that, AI goes from, again, somewhere, and I can't get this out of my head. It was the wow, how now.
Yep.
I think
wow,
2025. Yeah, 2025 becomes the year of now, both in terms of like these tools becoming adopted at scale and being used to, both enhance efficiency and enhance effectiveness. So I think, every company is going to need to like transform and become AI forward. And it's 2025.
Yeah, I agree with you in general. I think specifically, the first use case that came to everyone's mind with AI was all creative. And I've been kind of skeptical about that for a lot of reasons. I think that the Viant demo showed how powerful it could be for like planning and doing the work that frankly humans are not even that good at in agencies, but use spreadsheets and things like that. So I think if I had to go out on a limb on a specific prediction, it would be that we see either a holding company or some agencies like fully adopt AI for the planning and early work in the campaign cycle.
So you have planning, and again, Viant AI, I think really showed the future of it. You've got buying, you've got like operations, account management. There's a whole bunch of areas that are just like extremely analytics, extremely people intensive, that we know there's companies just attacking from an AI perspective. So I fully agree with you. But then at the same time, just the ability to, do cool things from a personalization perspective, and, what we're seeing with Sora and even Grok with, text to video, it's like really, really exciting. So again, I think it happens everywhere.
Yeah, I think it happens everywhere eventually. I'm waiting for the breakout. I'm waiting for the advertising specific use case that starts scaling to, tens of millions of dollars in revenue or hundreds of millions in cost savings. And I don't think you could say, well, Adobe Photoshop's, autofill is an advertising use case. Fine. But not really. Like I want in those steps you just outlined, planning, execution, optimization, reporting. Where's the breakout ad tech company or advertising technology company? I don't think we've seen it unless you want to nominate somebody.
Well, you've seen it with PMax, with Advantage Plus.
Of course.
Tens of billions of dollars.
Yes,
spend,
we've talked about that previously. Yeah.
There's companies that are on the edge of it for sure that I think we'll hear more from in 2025. Right.
And we could combine some of these themes. We could say, well, maybe Netflix has that closed loop data, or maybe Walmart and Vizio have the closed loop data. Maybe they acquire TV Scientific or Vibe, depending on who wants to sell, and then they create PMax for TV, and the world has changed. That's a combo that totally makes sense. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying you can see how it all comes together.
Somebody should hire you.
I'm too busy, man. I don't have time for this stuff.
Do we have a prediction for Marketecture for 2025?
I would say that Marketecture, we currently have 3 employees. Let's do the employee thing. I used to do this at Beeswax every year seriously, it was fun. Every year I would put a spreadsheet together and I'd ask every employee to predict how many employees we would have as of the Christmas party the following year. And then we'd give out an award for whoever came closest. And it was funny because people would have really bad guesses, some of them. But anyway, so I currently have 3 employees. It's me, AdTech God, and Jeremy. How many employees will I have as of this session next year?
I think you're going to have more. I'll go with 6. I'll go with doubling the company size. Just, kind of knowing and observing everything that you're doing, I could imagine that each of the 3 legs of the Marketecture stool could benefit from more resources, more enhancement.
Yeah. I'm good with 11.
11?
I don't have a plan to get to 11. I'm just totally guessing. So the thing is, we don't have a strategic plan. We don't have a strategy. We're just winging it. And it's working so far. So my plan in 2025 is to continue winging it. The only thing that's for certain is that every Friday morning, you'll be able to listen to the dulcet tones of Eric and I talking about Wawa.
Amazing. All right. Well, we should end it there.
Yeah, we should. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for your support through the year. I want to thank our unsung hero, our producer, Mike Fellhaber, who works on our AV. We called him out last year, and we want to call him out again. He helps keep Marketecture running. We don't count him as an employee, but still, we want to thank him. And everyone have a great holidays, and see us at CES. Eric, do you want to say anything before I cut you off, like I always do by accident?
No, just that. Thank you for letting me be involved in what is an awesome unpaid internship that has gone for so long. So thank you, Ari. Thank you, team, and thank you, everybody that listened.
You're not getting our checks. I must have your address wrong.
Amazing. All right, everybody. All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.